This happened back in 2001, near the end of the year, and only a couple months after 9/11. Almost every year, in the winter, my family would take a vacation to somewhere a lot warmer. And this year we decided to go to California. Though, due to recent events, most of us either chose or were forced to drive rather than fly. Because of my job at the time, and how late my shifts ran, I got stuck driving alone. I was driving from my home state of Utah to the area all of us would be staying in California. After some time, I finally entered into Nevada and continued my road trip on the seemingly abandoned desert roads. It was the middle of the night, and I would only see a car pass maybe every 15 minutes. Though eventually, out of nowhere, I could see police lights turn on directly behind me. I was exhausted, and honestly annoyed because I hadn't been speeding or doing anything illegal. I pulled over to the side of the road, and the police officer walked up to the driver's side window, which in itself threw me off. Usually when you get pulled over on the highway, they'll come to the passenger side window so as to be out of the road. Though I ignored it and complied when I was asked for my license and registration. But as I held out my hand with the requested documents, he just stared at me, not moving at all. This went on for a solid minute, until finally, without saying a word, he grabbed my stuff and walked back to his car, just to return almost immediately. He then told me to step outside of my vehicle. Now, at this point, I started to worry, as I'd gotten many tickets before, but had never once been asked to step outside of the car. I did as he said, and he then asked me if I had been drinking. I said I hadn't, and then proceeded to ask why I was being pulled over. The guy claimed I had been driving erratically and swerving between lanes, which I knew for a fact wasn't true. Even though it was late, I've always been a night owl and was completely awake and sober while driving. The guy then asked me if I was a terrorist, which was completely absurd. His question caught me off guard, as what police officer would ask this question on a routine traffic stop? I obviously replied saying no, to which he then, completely disregarding his question, instructed me to walk a line as a test to determine if I was sober or not. I obviously passed without question. The guy then claimed he needed to search my car to see if I had any drugs. I thought about it for a minute, because I knew my rights, but I didn't want to deal with the whole process of refusing, so I gave him the okay. I also knew he wouldn't find anything. The guy opened my trunk, and was greeted to a large assortment of knives, which was completely legal. My husband was big into hunting, and for the most part we shared a car, which is why there were so many knives in the first place. The officer asked about it, and I explained to him that my husband was a hunter. For whatever reason, this really set him off, and he was practically screaming at me that it was unsafe to be in possession of so many. Honestly, this pissed me off, which caused me to start looking around at my situation. I was alone, in the middle of the night on the side of the highway with this supposed police officer. I was only now realizing that this could have been anyone. Who's to say this wasn't some random guy in a fake police uniform? The guy then told me that I would have to do another sober test. I just stared at him for a while and said no. I demanded he call for backup and have other officers come to the scene. I could tell he was thrown off by this. I said I wanted a female officer and I would no longer comply with anything he said. The guy then told me to calm down, wrote down a speeding ticket, and let me go. To this day, I've never paid that ticket and never heard a word about it. At the time, I was really shaken up by the whole experience. Looking back, I'm confident in saying that I don't think that was a real cop, and that if I hadn't stood up for myself, things would have gone a lot worse. It was a late summer night in July, maybe 10 p.m. I'm only 17, and was left home alone for the week, as my parents went on some vacation with some friends in the Bahamas. It was this late into the night that I realized I'd forgotten to take the dog out for a walk. Our dog was really young, and I knew that missing even one day outside would not have been fun for him. So, I figured a late night walk around the neighborhood would have been better than none at all. We were out for around 30 minutes. I was now upstairs in my room playing Xbox with the volume really loud, though I swear I could hear noises coming from downstairs. Being 17, I just chalked it up to nothing, but eventually I was forced to mute the TV and listen closer as the sounds weren't stopping. But of course, right as I muted the TV, there was nothing. I resumed playing my game for another hour when I heard it again, only louder this time. I was sure I heard it this time, and was honestly a little freaked out. To prove to myself that it was nothing, I decided to go downstairs to the basement where I thought I heard the noise coming from. But as soon as I opened the basement door, I was hit with a wave of cold air. I went downstairs and noticed one of the windows was wide open. I was 100% sure I had closed and locked all the windows in the house prior to me leaving to walk the dog. I was ready to make a run for it when something stopped me. I turned around, and for the first time I noticed the basement closet door was slightly cracked open. My family never used this closet. The door was always and should have been shut. I stood in front of that door for what felt like an entire hour, debating whether I should open it all the way. Finally, I moved closer and put my hand on the doorknob. But before I could open it, I could hear the clear sound of shuffling coming from the other side. I have never run faster up a flight of stairs in my life. I went to my bedroom, locked the door, and called the police. When they arrived, they came in and searched the house. But not even 5 minutes into their search, I could hear a gunshot from downstairs, followed by a lot of commotion. A few minutes later, the police came out with a deranged-looking man, who, by the looks of it, was most likely homeless. The man was put in the back of a police car. The police proceeded to tell me that when they had opened the door to the closet, they found the man sitting in a corner pointing a gun at them. The man shot one bullet towards the cops, but luckily he missed, and the cops were able to disarm and arrest him. The scariest part was how close I was to opening that door myself, and likely being shot.